Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A month ago, the world watched in horror as Vladimir Putin began, or rather escalated, when you consider his actions in Crimea and his actions in the Donbas, his unwarranted and unprovoked war against Ukraine. Putin's war of choice shattered the peace in Europe and demonstrated just what a brute he truly is and how brave and resilient the people of Ukraine are. We've talked a lot about incidences of democratic backsliding in this committee in various countries, of course, but we're seeing in Ukraine a democratic resurgence, and that has been truly inspiring. The people of Ukraine have been so brave and so valiant, and it's really been, I think, very inspiring to the whole world. So I'm glad that we're able to consider several bipartisan measures today to address various aspects of this crisis and hold Russia accountable for this truly senseless war. Among these measures is the ranking member's, Mr. McCall's Ukraine Invasion, War Crimes, Deterrence, and Accountability Act, and I want to voice my support for this legislation in particular. Vladimir Putin's troops, on his orders, are committing war crimes against the Ukrainian people, from the shelling of hospitals, civilians being murdered and their bodies found in the street, mass graves in Busha. The world has been repeatedly shocked over the last month by Putin's brutality. We must ensure accountability for these atrocities, and this legislation will support that effort. In addition to this specific legislation, I'd also like to note three general points on this matter. First, and I think this needs to be said, the Biden administration totally failed to deter Putin from attacking Ukraine in the first place. Weapons to Ukraine didn't start in earnest until the invasion was imminent, and sanctions didn't begin until after the Russians had crossed the border, and that was against the urging of many colleagues in the House, both Democrats and Republicans, and in the Senate. We urged deterrent efforts ahead of time, not after all this had already started. While Putin was escalating this crisis, the administration has repeatedly more or less bought the argument that doing more might be escalatory. A perfect example was the MiGs, which the Ukrainians still haven't gotten. That's absolutely outrageous that they still don't have them, and we're supposed to be determining what they need. They're the people fighting and dying on the ground, and they ought to determine what they need, and we ought to supply that to them. Second, unfortunately, there are a number of topics that we're not going to consider in this markup. For instance, we have yet to pass a major Russian sanctions package through this committee. Today would have been a perfect, if overdue, opportunity to do so. Also, we're not talking about gas prices and what should be already have been done to offset those, nor are we considering a new Iran deal, which may seem unrelated, but which Russia aims to use to circumvent the sanctions to a considerable degree. And they're in the middle of that, which is absurd for this administration to allow that to be actually happening right now. And then we need to make sure that we and our allies do not attempt to pressure Ukraine to enter into a bad settlement that gives Russia much, or really any, of what they were seeking in the first place. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, Jerry Connolly and I have been working to ensure that the United States seeks a Ukraine that is whole, free, and at peace. And now when the Russians are on the back foot, when they've truly been bloodied by the bravery of the Ukrainian people, I want to make sure that we and the West don't put undue pressure on Ukraine to enter into a deal, any deal, just to make this fighting stop. At this point, yes, we want the war to end, but Putin should not benefit from his criminal action here, and we should absolutely not put any pressure on the Ukrainians to enter into a deal which, in essence, they may be able to, with our help, push the Russians out of Ukraine, including the Donbas and Crimea. So anyway, thank you very much for holding this markup, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.